At 12:14 a.m., my stepfather kicked my door open, hit me 9 times, and smashed my phone while my mom stood in the corner laughing. What she said next shocked me more than his fists ever could. "You destroyed this family," she hissed, her eyes cold as winter frost. The blood in my mouth tasted like copper pennies. But it was her words that truly broke something inside me. I'd spent years trying to save her from him, never realizing she'd already chosen her side. That night, on my 25th birthday, I finally understood that sometimes the real betrayal comes from the one who gave you life. My name is Emily Walker, and I'm 32 now. But this story takes me back to when I was 25. Living alone in a small apartment in southeast Portland, I worked as a mental health counselor at a community clinic, helping others navigate their trauma while carrying my own like stones in my chest. That night, my birthday night, I'd just gotten home from a 12-hour shift, exhausted but content to spend the evening alone with takeout Thai food and a true crime podcast. The apartment was quiet, just how I liked it. No yelling, no walking on eggshells, no sudden crashes that made my heart race. I'd carefully built this sanctuary over the years since leaving home for college. Every piece of furniture, every photo on the wall, every plant by the window, they were all mine, chosen by me, safe. I was washing dishes when the first knock came. Not a knock, really. More like someone trying to break down the door. The sound made me drop a glass, and it shattered in the sink. My body knew before my mind did. That familiar ice-cold dread spreading through my veins, the way my breathing went shallow, my muscles tensing for flight or freeze. "Open this fucking door! Emily!" Mark's voice boomed through the wood. My stepfather, a man I hadn't seen in over a year, hadn't spoken to in 2. Through the peephole, I saw him, red-faced, swaying slightly, his massive frame filling the hallway. But it was the figure behind him that made my blood run cold. My mother, Linda, stood there in her beige coat, the one I'd bought her 3 Christmases ago. She wasn't cowering or crying. She was smiling. Not a nervous smile, not a placating smile. A cold, satisfied smile, like she was watching a plan come together. My hands shook as I reached for my phone. "I'm calling 911, I shouted through the door. "Go ahead," my mother said, her voice eerily calm. "Tell them how you've been harassing us. Tell them about the restraining order we're filing against you." Restraining order? I hadn't contacted them in months. The last time I'd reached out was to send my mother information about a women's shelter, and she'd never responded. Mark's shoulder hit the door with a thunderous crack. The cheap lock couldn't take much more. I pressed the emergency SOS button I'd installed under my kitchen counter. A silent alarm connected directly to 911, something my therapist had suggested after I'd told her about my family. Then I grabbed my phone, trying to dial, but Mark crashed through on his 3rd attempt. The door flew open, splinters of wood scattering across my floor. He was on me before I could run, his hand tangling in my hair, yanking me backward. The phone flew from my grip, and I heard it crack against the wall. "You think you're so smart," he snarled, alcohol and rage on his breath. "Sending your mother that garbage, trying to break up our marriage." The first blow caught me in the ribs, then my shoulder, my face. I counted them, a habit from childhood, some part of my brain trying to maintain control by cataloging the damage. 9 times. 9 times he hit me while my mother watched from my broken doorway. "Mom," I gasped, blood filling my mouth. "Please." She stepped closer, careful not to get her shoes dirty in the spreading chaos. "You did this to yourself," she said, always trying to play the victim, always trying to make Mark look bad. "You've been poisoned since the day your father died." The words hurt more than Mark's fists. My father, who'd held my hand through chemo, who'd made me promise to take care of Mom, who died believing his girls would always have each other. Mark grabbed my phone from where it had fallen, bringing his boot down on it repeatedly until it was just plastic and glass fragments. "No more calling for help," he said. "No more interfering." But he didn't know about the silent alarm. He didn't know that 3 neighbors had security cameras pointing at the hallway. He didn't know that 7 years of therapy had taught me to document everything, that I had recordings of his threatening voicemails saved in the cloud, that I'd been building a case without even realizing I'd need it. The sirens came fast. Portland police were used to domestic calls in this neighborhood. Mark tried to run, but 2 officers were already in the stairwell. My mother's smile finally faltered when they put him in handcuffs. "Officers, this is a misunderstanding," she started, but they'd seen enough. Me, bloodied on the floor, the broken door, the destroyed phone, the way Mark was still trying to lunge at me even in restraints. As the paramedics checked my injuries, I watched my mother's face cycle through emotions, anger, fear, and finally, a cold emptiness that I recognized. It was the same look she'd had the day we buried my father. The day she decided that feeling nothing was easier than feeling everything. The hospital ceiling had exactly 47 tiles. I counted them while waiting for the x-rays, letting my mind drift back to before everything went wrong, before Mark, before my mother became a stranger, back when my father, David, was still alive. I was 8 when Dad got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Even now, 24 years later, I can still remember the exact shade of gray his skin turned during chemo, the way his laugh got quieter but never disappeared, how he'd hold my small hand in his thin one and tell me stories about brave princesses who saved kingdoms. "Emmy," he'd whisper when Mom stepped out for coffee, "promise me you'll look after her. She's stronger than she knows, but she'll need you." I promised. Of course I did. I would have promised him anything in those final weeks. After he died, it was just Mom and me against the world. We moved to a smaller apartment in Northeast Portland, and she took double shifts at the hospital where she worked as a nurse. I'd do my homework in the break room, and she'd quiz me on spelling words between patients. We had Sunday pancakes and Friday movie nights. We were healing, slowly, together. She'd wear his cologne sometimes, just a tiny spray on her wrist. "So I can remember," she'd say, and we'd both cry a little, then laugh at our matching puffy eyes. For 4 years, we were okay, better than okay. We were a team. I made honor roll. She got promoted to charge nurse, and we started talking about maybe getting a cat. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Then Mark Sullivan walked into our bank. Mom was disputing a charge, and he was the manager who handled her complaint. Tall, clean-shaven, with silver at his temples and a smile that reached his eyes. He waived the fee and asked her to coffee. She came home that night glowing in a way I hadn't seen since before Dad got sick. "His name's Mark," she told me, sitting on my bed like we were girlfriends sharing secrets. "He's divorced, has a house in Lake Oswego, and Emmy, he asked about you. He wants to make sure you're comfortable with him being around." That should have been my first warning. What kind of man thinks about the kid on a first date? But I was 12, desperate to see my mother happy. And when he showed up for dinner with a telescope book because Mom mentioned I liked stars, I thought maybe this was okay. Mark was patient at first. He came to my science fair, cheered too loudly when I won second place. He taught me to drive in the parking lot of an abandoned grocery store. He called me kiddo and ruffled my hair like TV dads did. 6 months in, they married at the courthouse. Mom wore a cream dress and her favorite lipstick, Russian Red by MAC. I was her maid of honor, holding grocery store flowers and believing in second chances. We moved into Mark's house that summer. It was bigger than anywhere we'd lived. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a backyard with an actual garden. I got the room with the window seat, and Mark bought me a computer for school. Mom decorated with her nursing awards and Dad's old photos. Mark didn't object, said David must have been a good man to raise such wonderful girls. The changes came slowly, like fog rolling in from the coast. First, Mark suggested Mom could work part-time since he made enough for all of us. "You've been running yourself ragged," he said, rubbing her shoulders. "Let me take care of you." Then joint bank accounts because it's easier for taxes. Then selling her car because we don't need 2 vehicles, and mine's newer. Each decision seemed logical, caring even. Mom was tired of being strong alone. She let him take the weight. By the time I turned 13, my mother had transformed. Gone were the bright scrubs and red lipstick. Mark preferred her in tasteful colors: beige, gray, navy. Her friends stopped calling because Mark always needed her home for dinner. Her sister stopped visiting because Mark said she was a bad influence. Single at 40, too independent. "Your mom's happy," Mark would tell me when I questioned things. "Happier than she's been in years. Don't you want her to be happy?" I did. God, I did. So I stayed quiet when she stopped singing in the shower. I said nothing when she began asking his permission for everything. Buying groceries, getting her hair cut, calling her mother. I was 13, then 14, and what did I know about the way love could become a cage? But I knew something was wrong the day she threw away Dad's cologne. I found it in the trash, still half full. "Mark says it's not healthy to hold on to the past," she explained, not meeting my eyes. That night, I started keeping a journal, writing down the small changes, the new rules, the way my mother was disappearing one compromise at a time. I didn't know I was documenting evidence. I just knew I needed to remember who we used to be. Before I forgot, too. The first time I saw Mark's true face, I was 14 and had stayed late for drama club. Mom was supposed to pick me up, but when I called, Mark answered her phone. "She's not feeling well," he said, voice flat. "Take the bus." When I got home, I found Mom sitting at the kitchen table, staring at pieces of a broken plate scattered across the floor. Her hands were shaking as she tried to pick them up. "Mom?" She startled, quickly sweeping the pieces into a dustpan. "I dropped it," she said. "So clumsy. Mark was upset. It was from his grandmother's china set." But I'd seen that plate intact on the counter when I left for school, and the dent in the wall behind her was new. "Where is he?" "Golf, with clients." She forced a smile. "Help me with dinner? He'll be hungry when he gets back." That became our new normal. Mark would explode over something trivial. Dinner 10 minutes late, a throw pillow out of place, Mom laughing too loudly at a TV show. He never hit her. Not then. He didn't need to. His voice alone could reduce her to tears, and then he'd comfort her. Tell her he just wanted things to be perfect for his girls. The financial control tightened like a noose. Mom's credit cards disappeared one by one. "Identity theft is everywhere," Mark explained, cutting them up. "I'll handle the finances. Less stress for you. Linda." She had to show receipts for everything. $20 at the grocery store required an itemized list. A coffee with her one remaining friend needed justification. When her mother, my grandmother, sent her birthday money, Mark deposited it immediately into his account for safekeeping. I started hiding money in my room. $5 here, 10 there, saved from lunch money or earned tutoring younger kids. Something told me I'd need it someday. The isolation was surgical in its precision. Mark had opinions about all Mom's relationships. Her sister was toxic. Her best friend was jealous of our happiness. Her book club was gossipy women with too much time. One by one, he extracted her from every connection until he was her entire world. "I have you and Mark," she'd tell me when I asked why she never went out anymore. "What else do I need?" Her phone gained a tracking app. For safety, Mark said. He'd call randomly throughout the day, and if she didn't answer within 3 rings, he'd come home. She learned to keep it with her always, even in the bathroom. At 15, I made the mistake of defending her. Mark had been berating her for 40 minutes about a charge on the credit card statement, a $3.50 library late fee. "It's $3, I said. "It's not a big deal." The silence that followed was deafening. Mark turned to me slowly, and I saw something in his eyes that made my stomach drop. "Not a big deal?" His voice was quiet, which was worse than yelling. "Emily, do you know how hard I work to provide for this family? Do you understand what sacrifice means?" He launched into a lecture about responsibility, about gratitude, about how my father's death had clearly left me without proper guidance. Mom sat frozen, and when I looked at her for support, she whispered, "Apologize." "But Mom," Apologize. Now. So I did. I apologized for something that didn't need an apology, and I watched my mother shrink further into herself. That's when I started staying away. Drama club, debate team, volunteer work at the library, anything to avoid being home. My grades became my escape plan. If I could get into college, get scholarships, I could leave. Maybe then I could figure out how to save her. But the dinners were mandatory. Family time, Mark called it. We'd sit at the table while he talked about his day, his achievements, his plans for our future. Mom would nod along, and I'd push food around my plate, counting down the days until graduation. The rules multiplied. No friends over without his approval. No social media because it was dangerous. My bedroom door had to stay open unless I was changing. He'd do safety checks of my room, going through drawers, reading my homework, checking my computer history. I learned to hide everything that mattered. My real journal went inside an old tampon box. My college applications were done at school. My phone had a password he didn't know, though I had to be careful. He'd demand to see it randomly. "He loves us," Mom would say on the rare occasions we were alone. "He just wants what's best. You don't understand. Emmy, it's hard for him. Taking on a ready-made family. We should be grateful." Grateful. The word made me want to scream. But I'd look at her, thin now, nervous, constantly checking the clock to make sure she wouldn't disappoint him, and I'd swallow my anger. She was drowning, and I was still too young to know how to throw her a lifeline. So I documented everything instead. Times, dates, incidents, the way she flinched when his car pulled in the driveway, the way she'd rehearse conversations before calling anyone, making sure she wouldn't say anything that might upset him, the way she'd started taking anxiety medication, but had to hide the bottles because Mark didn't believe in chemical crutches. I was building a case without realizing it, gathering evidence for a trial that wouldn't come for years, but somewhere deep down, I knew that one day, all of this would matter. One day, I'd need to prove what he'd done to us. I just never imagined she'd stand by his side when that day came. The morning I found the bruise changed everything. It was a Saturday in February, my junior year of high school. I'd gotten up early to work on scholarship applications when I heard Mom in the bathroom, crying softly. "Mom?" I knocked. "You okay?" "Fine, honey, just a headache." But when she came out, her makeup couldn't quite cover the purple shadow along her jawline. She saw me notice and quickly adjusted her scarf. "I ran into the bathroom door last night," she said, not meeting my eyes. "You know how clumsy I am in the dark." The bathroom door opened outward. That afternoon, while Mark was at his country club, I sat her down. "Mom, please, we can leave. I've been saving money. We can go to Grandma's in California. Or—" "Stop." Her voice was sharp, scared. "Emily, you don't understand. I can't leave. The house is in his name. The bank accounts are in his name. I haven't worked in 3 years. Who would hire me?" And he said if I ever tried to leave, he'd make sure I never saw you again. He knows judges, lawyers. He'd say I'm an unfit mother. That's not true. "Isn't it?" She laughed bitterly. "I can't even buy groceries without his permission. What judge would give me custody? At least if I stay. I can protect you until you're 18. Protect me. As if her presence was a shield when really, we were both drowning, just at different speeds. I threw myself into my escape plan with new urgency. My grades were perfect. 4.0 GPA, Honor Society, AP classes. I studied for the SATs like my life depended on it because it did. Every college application essay was polished until it shone. I needed a full ride. I needed to get out. Ms. Rodriguez, my guidance counselor, became my lifeline. She knew something was wrong at home. Teachers always know. And she helped me apply for every scholarship available. "University of Washington," she said one day, sliding a brochure across her desk. "Full ride for state residents with your stats. Far enough from Portland to matter. Close enough to come back if needed." If needed, we both knew what that meant. Senior year was a countdown. 287 days until graduation, 310 until move-in day at UW. I marked them off in my hidden journal, each X a step closer to freedom, but the guilt ate at me. How could I leave her? "You have to go," Mom whispered one night when Mark was traveling for business. We were sitting in my room, and for a moment, she seemed like herself again. "Emmy, you have to get out and live your life. Don't end up like me." "Come with me," I begged for the 100th time. "We'll figure it out together." She shook her head. "This is my life now. I made my choices. But you still have chances. Take them." The acceptance letter came in March, full scholarship to UW, just like Ms. Rodriguez had predicted. I should have been ecstatic, but all I felt was dread when Mark insisted on celebrating at an expensive restaurant. "Psychology major," he read from the letter, his voice dripping disdain. "You planning to psychoanalyze everyone? Emily? Think you're going to fix people?" "It's a solid field," Mom ventured quietly. "Good job prospects." He turned on her. "Did I ask for your opinion?" The rest of dinner was silent. As graduation approached, Mark's behavior escalated. He'd find reasons to ground me, trying to sabotage my finals. He accidentally deleted my completed English paper the night before it was due. He scheduled family obligations during important events, then raged when I refused to skip them. "You're so ungrateful," he'd snarl, "after everything I've done for you." Everything he'd done: destroyed my mother, made our home a prison, taught me that love could be weaponized. The night before I left for college, Mom helped me pack in secret while Mark was out. She folded my clothes with shaking hands, tucking little notes between them that I wouldn't find until later. "I'm proud of you. Study hard. Be brave. I love you." At the bottom of my suitcase, she hid an envelope with $500 in cash, money she'd somehow scraped together without him knowing. "How did you—" "Grocery money," she whispered. $5 here, 10 there. Told him prices went up. It's not much, but— I hugged her so tight I felt her bones through her sweater. When had she gotten so thin? "I'll call every day," I promised. "No," she pulled back. "Urgent. Only when he's at work. And if I don't answer, don't leave voicemails. He checks everything." The next morning, Mark made a show of loading my things into Mom's car. He was letting her drive me, but only because he had a golf tournament. His parting words were a warning disguised as advice. "Remember, Emily, family is everything. Don't forget where you came from." The threat was clear. Don't forget who you left behind. As we drove north on I-5, Mom was quiet for the first hour. Then, as Seattle's skyline appeared, she spoke. "Your father would be so proud. You're doing what I couldn't. You're saving yourself." "Mom." "Listen to me." Her knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "Live your life. Fall in love with someone kind. Have adventures. Don't look back. And whatever you do, don't try to save me. Promise me." It was the same thing Dad had asked, for me to take care of her. Now she was asking me to let her go. I couldn't promise that. I wouldn't. Instead, I memorized her face in that moment. The way the morning light caught the silver in her hair. The ghost of who she used to be still visible beneath the surface. "I love you, Mom." "I know, baby. That's why you have to go." College was everything I'd hoped and more. For the first time in 6 years, I could breathe. My roommate, Keiko, became my first real friend since middle school. My professors challenged me in ways that had nothing to do with survival. I discovered I was good at research, at understanding patterns in human behavior, probably because I'd spent years studying Mark's. I called Mom twice a week when Mark was at work, our conversations carefully timed and scripted. She'd tell me about her garden, the books she was reading, anything except the truth. I'd tell her about classes, the weather, anything except how guilty I felt for leaving. For 6 years, we maintained this fragile balance. I graduated, got my master's, started working at the community mental health clinic. I specialized in domestic violence survivors. Though Mom didn't know that, I learned about trauma bonds, coercive control, the cycle of abuse, Everything I studied explained what had happened to her, but understanding didn't make it easier to accept. Then, 2 weeks before my 25th birthday, everything changed. It was 11 p.m. on a Tuesday when my phone rang. Mom's number. Mark should have been asleep. "Emmy?" Her voice was barely a whisper, and I could hear her crying. "I need help." My heart stopped. "Mom, what happened? Are you hurt?" "He found it. The pamphlet you sent. The women's shelter. He found it in my purse." I'd mailed it to her workplace 3 months earlier, after she'd mentioned a bad fight that left her with a sprained wrist. Just information. Nothing more. But I'd hoped maybe she was finally ready. "Where is he now?" "Basement. Drinking. Emmy. He's so angry. He broke my phone. I'm calling from the bathroom on an old prepaid I hid. He says he's going to teach us both a lesson. He keeps saying your name." "Mom, listen to me. You need to leave. Right now. Don't pack anything. Just get in the car and drive. Come to Seattle. I have everything ready." "I can't. He has the car keys. And my purse. Everything." "Then call 911. "No!" Her panic was sharp. "No police. He'll kill me. You don't understand what he's capable of." A crash in the background. Mark's voice, roaring. "Linda, where the fuck are you?" "I have to go. I love you, Emmy. I'm so sorry for everything." "Mom, wait." The line went dead. I called back 17 times. No answer. I called the Portland police for a wellness check. But they said, without evidence of immediate danger, they couldn't force entry. Mark answered the door. They reported. Said Linda was sleeping. Seemed fine. For 3 days, I heard nothing. I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't focus on anything except my phone. I called in sick to work and drove to Portland. But when I knocked on their door, no one answered. Her car was gone. The neighbors hadn't seen her. Finally, on day 4, I got a text from her number. "I'm fine. Please stop calling. We need space from your drama." It wasn't her, the language, the tone. It was Mark using her phone. But what could I do? The police said there was no crime in a married couple wanting distance from relatives. I hired a private investigator with my savings. He found nothing suspicious. Mom was seen grocery shopping, going to work, normal activities. But the photos he took showed the truth. She'd lost 20 pounds. Her eyes were vacant, and she never went anywhere alone. Mark was always there, hovering, watching. 2 weeks later, another text. "Stop having people follow us or we'll get a restraining order." So I stopped. What else could I do? I'd tried everything legal, everything safe. I researched more desperate measures, hiring someone to get her out, kidnapping her myself. But my therapist talked me down. "You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved," Dr. Kim said gently. "All you can do is be ready when they're ready." But I knew Mom wanted to be saved. She'd called me. She'd asked for help. She just couldn't fight anymore. Mark had won that war of attrition years ago. I threw myself into work, helping other women escape what Mom couldn't. Each success story was a small victory, but also a reminder of my failure. I kept my phone charged, volume on high, ready for the call that never came. My 25th birthday approached with a sense of dread I couldn't shake. Something was coming. I could feel it in my bones. That same instinct that had told me to document Mark's abuse all those years ago. I prepared everything, updated my emergency contacts, gave my neighbor a spare key, installed that panic button in my apartment. I even wrote a will, though I had little to leave except debt and determination. "You're being paranoid," Keiko said when she saw my preparations. Maybe I was, but when you grow up in a house where danger wears a smile and calls itself love, paranoia becomes survival. The last text from Mom's phone came the day before my birthday. "Happy early birthday, Emily. Sorry we can't celebrate." We, as if she had any say in it. I responded one last time. "I love you. Mom, I'm here whenever you're ready." 24 hours later, Mark was kicking down my door, and I finally understood why she'd really called that night 2 weeks ago. It wasn't just about the pamphlet. She'd been saying goodbye. The door exploded inward at 12:14 a.m., and time seemed to slow down. Mark filled the doorframe like a monster from my childhood nightmares. Except this was real, and there was nowhere to hide under the covers. "There's the little bitch who thinks she can destroy my marriage," he slurred, stumbling forward. The smell of whiskey and rage preceded him. Behind him, my mother stood in the hallway, and for a split second, I thought she'd come to help me. Then I saw her face. She was smiling. Not the nervous, placating smile I'd seen her wear for years, but something cold and satisfied. "Mom?" My voice cracked. She stepped into my apartment, careful to avoid the splintered wood. "You just couldn't leave well enough alone, could you? Sending those pamphlets? Hiring that investigator? Did you think we wouldn't find out?" The revelation hit me like ice water. She knew about the PI, which meant she'd been acting for those photos, playing the victim while reporting back to Mark. Mark's fist connected with my ribs before I could process the betrayal. The air left my lungs in a rush, and I doubled over, his hand tangled in my hair, yanking me upright. 7 years, he hissed. 7 years I've dealt with your disrespect, your judgment. Linda told me everything, how you tried to turn her against me, how you filled her head with lies. Another blow to my shoulder. I tried to block it, but he was twice my size. My self-defense training from college felt useless against his bulk and fury. I gasped, but he hit me again, this time across the face. I tasted copper. "Mark, careful," Mom said, not out of concern for me, but warning. "The neighbors." "Let them hear," he snarled, but he grabbed me by the throat instead. Quieter, but more terrifying. "You think you're so smart with your psychology degree, analyzing everyone, but you're just a damaged little girl who can't accept that Mommy chose me over you." He threw me against the wall. Picture frames shattered around me. Photos from graduation, from birthdays, from the life I'd built without them. I counted the blows as they came. 4, 5, 6, my ribs screaming. 7, my shoulder wrenched backward. 8, my knee buckling. 9, the final blow to my already swollen face. I collapsed, my hand desperately reaching for my phone on the kitchen counter. Mark saw it and laughed, grabbing it before I could. "Calling for help? Just like that night you called the cops on us?" He raised the phone above his head and brought it down on the floor. Once, twice, the screen spiderwebbed, then went black. He stomped on it until it was just fragments. Through my blurred vision, I saw Mom step closer. This was it. She'd finally stop him. She had to. "You destroyed this family," she said instead, her voice arctic. "Your father would be ashamed. All that money he left for your college, wasted on you becoming some bleeding heart therapist. You helped strangers but couldn't respect the man who put a roof over your head." "Dad's money?" I coughed, blood speckling the floor. You said there was no money." Her face flickered, just for a moment, with something that might have been guilt. "There wasn't. Mark invested it, for our future." The final piece clicked. My college fund, Dad's life insurance. She'd given it all to Mark. "You let him take Dad's money?" The betrayal hurt worse than any physical blow. "I didn't let him do anything. We're married. What's mine is his." She knelt beside me, and for a wild moment, I thought she might help me up. Instead, she whispered, "You should have stayed away. You should have just forgotten about us." Mark was pacing now, muttering, "Need to teach her. Need to make sure she never comes back." That's when I remembered the panic button. My hand was already near the kitchen counter. As Mark turned to say something to Mom, I pressed it. Silent, invisible, but somewhere, a 911 dispatcher was getting my address, flagged as high priority. "What should we do with her?" Mom asked Mark, like I was a problem to be solved. "We leave," Mark decided. "Let her explain her injuries to whoever finds her. Junkie break-in. Probably. This neighborhood's full of them." They were going to leave me here, broken and bleeding. My own mother was going to step over my body and walk away. "Why?" I managed to ask her. "Why are you doing this?" She paused at the door, looking back, For just a second, I saw her, really saw her, the frightened woman underneath the cold mask. Her left arm had fresh bruises I hadn't noticed before. Her eyes were red-rimmed beneath the careful makeup. "Because," she said quietly, "it was you or me, and I chose me." Mark grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the door. "Come on, we need to—" The sirens cut through his words, multiple sirens, getting closer. His face went white. "You fucking bitch," he snarled, lunging for me again. But the police were already in the stairwell. My neighbor had called them too. Hearing the commotion, 2 officers appeared in my broken doorway, taking in the scene. Me, bloodied on the floor, Mark, fists clenched, standing over me, my destroyed phone in pieces. Mom pressed against the wall. "Sir, step away from her, now." Mark tried to run, shoving past one officer, but the other was ready. They had him on the ground in seconds, cuffs clicking around his wrists. "This is a misunderstanding," he kept saying. "She attacked us. We were defending ourselves. Tell them, Linda." But Mom stood frozen, staring at me on the floor. The mask was cracking, reality seeping through. Her daughter's blood on the floor, her husband in handcuffs, the neighbors gathering in the hallway, recording everything on their phones. "Ma'am," an officer approached her, "we need to ask you some questions." She looked at him, then at me, then at Mark being dragged away. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came. The smile was gone. Everything was gone except the truth she could no longer deny. The paramedics arrived, checking my injuries, asking me questions I could barely answer through the pain, but I kept my eyes on my mother, watching as she stood there in my destroyed apartment, finally seeing what she'd become. Or maybe seeing what she'd always been, and I'd just been too desperate for a mother's love to notice. The courtroom smelled like old wood and disappointment. 6 weeks after the attack, I sat in the witness chair, my still-healing ribs aching with each breath. Mark sat at the defense table in an expensive suit. His attorney, Harvard Law, according to the research I'd done, beside him. He'd made bail within 48 hours. Of course, men like Mark always did. Ms. Walker, his attorney, Richard Brennan, stood with practiced confidence. "Isn't it true that you've been harassing my client and his wife for years?" "No," I said clearly into the microphone. "I sent my mother information about domestic violence resources. That's not harassment. You hired a private investigator to follow them. I was concerned for my mother's safety." "Based on what evidence?" I looked directly at Mark. "Based on 17 years of watching him systematically destroy her." The prosecutor, ADA. Jennifer Martinez, had warned me about this. Brennan would try to paint me as the aggressor, Mark as the victim, the self-defense angle. It was ridiculous. But with enough money and the right jury, ridiculous sometimes won. "You have a history of mental health issues, don't you?" Brennan continued. "You see a therapist weekly." "I'm a mental health counselor. Therapy is part of maintaining my professional wellness. It's also how I processed growing up in an abusive household." "Alleged abuse," Brennan corrected. "Documented abuse," I countered, and saw Martinez's small smile. We'd prepared for this. Martinez stood for redirect. "Ms. Walker, can you describe your injuries from that night?" 3 broken ribs, a dislocated shoulder, severe facial contusions, a grade 2 concussion. I was in the hospital for 4 days. "And what did the defendant say during the attack?" I recited Mark's words verbatim, my voice steady despite the memory. The jury shifted uncomfortably when I got to the part about him saying he'd teach me a lesson. Then came the moment we'd all been waiting for. Linda Walker took the stand. She looked smaller than I remembered, wearing a modest gray dress that covered the bruises I knew were there. She'd lost more weight. Her hands trembled as she took the oath. "Mrs. Sullivan," Brennan began gently, "can you tell us what happened that night?" Mom looked at Mark, then at me, then at her lap. "We went to Emily's apartment to talk to her about the harassment." "And did your husband attack her?" Silence stretched. The courtroom held its breath. "Mrs. Sullivan?" She started to cry. I can't do this anymore. Brennan's face tightened. Your Honor, I request a recess. No, Mom said suddenly, louder. No more recesses, no more lies. She looked up, and for the first time in years, I saw my mother, not Mark's wife, but my mother. He attacked her, unprovoked. She was just standing there, and he beat her while I watched. The courtroom erupted. Brennan objected. The judge called for order. Mark's face went from red to purple. Mrs. Sullivan? Martinez took over quickly. Did you try to stop him? No. The word came out as a sob. I didn't. I encouraged him. God help me. I stood there and told my baby girl that she deserved it. Why? Mom looked at Mark once more, and this time, she held his gaze. Because I was petrified. He'd been scheming for weeks, ever since he got his hands on that shelter pamphlet. He said if I didn't go along with him, if I didn't back him up, he would ruin everything for both of us. He claimed he would make it seem like I'd lost control, that everyone would think I had destroyed our lives before I could even stop him. You lying bitch! Mark erupted, jumping to his feet. The bailiffs moved immediately, but the damage was done. The jury saw his rage, the violence barely contained under the expensive suit. Mrs. Sullivan, Martinez continued once order was restored. Has your husband been violent with you? For 15 years, Mom whispered. The first time was 6 months after our wedding. Emily had just left for college, and he said I'd raised a disrespectful child and needed to be punished for it. She detailed it all, the financial control, the isolation, the escalating violence, the threats, how he'd invested my father's life insurance without her true consent, how he'd trapped her in a web she couldn't escape. I thought if I kept Emily away, he'd leave her alone. She finished. I thought I was protecting her, but I was just protecting him. When she finished testifying, she had to walk past Mark to leave the stand. He whispered something to her, low enough that only she and the bailiff heard, whatever it was. She stopped walking, turned to the judge, and said clearly, He just threatened to kill me when this is over. The judge ordered Mark remanded immediately, bail revoked. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, guilty on all counts, aggravated assault, breaking and entering, criminal threats, intimidation of a witness, the security footage from my building's hallway, the 911 recordings, my medical records, and Mom's testimony had built an ironclad case. At sentencing 2 weeks later, I gave my victim impact statement. I talked about growing up in fear, about watching my mother disappear, about building a life only to have him try to destroy it. Mark Sullivan didn't just attack me that night, I concluded. He attacked me every day for 17 years. He attacked my mother for longer. He's a predator who uses love as a weapon and marriage as a cage. He deserves the maximum sentence. The judge agreed. 18 years, with no possibility of early release for 5. As they led Mark away, he turned to look at us one last time. His eyes promised vengeance, but they were powerless now. He was just another criminal in handcuffs, heading to a cage of his own. Mom waited for me outside the courthouse. We hadn't spoken since her testimony. Emily, she started. Don't, I said. Not yet. Maybe not ever. You chose him over me for 17 years. One moment of truth doesn't erase that. I know, she whispered. I know. I just wanted to say, your father would be proud of you. You did what I couldn't. You survived. You fought back. You won. I looked at her. Really looked at her. She was 49 years old and starting over with nothing. Mark had drained the accounts before his arrest. The house would go to pay his legal fees. She was free but broken, safe but alone. There's a support group, I heard myself say. For survivors. Thursdays at 7. First Methodist Church on Division. She nodded, tears streaming. Thank you. I walked away, leaving her on the courthouse steps. I wasn't ready to forgive her. Might never be, but I could give her what I'd always tried to give, a chance to save herself. The cameras were waiting outside the courthouse after sentencing. Local news, national outlets, even some true crime podcasters. The story had everything they loved: family betrayal, survival, justice, a young woman who'd fought back against her abuser and won. I stopped at the microphones, my statement prepared. I'd written it the night before, knowing this moment would come. "My name is Emily Walker," I began, my voice steady and clear. "I'm a survivor of domestic violence, though I wasn't the primary victim. For 17 years, I watched Mark Sullivan destroy my mother while destroying me in different ways. He took my childhood, my family, my sense of safety, but he didn't take my future." A reporter shouted a question about my mother. I ignored it and continued. 1 in 4 women experience severe intimate partner violence. The children in these homes are victims too, carrying trauma that follows them long after they escape. I'm speaking out because silence is what allowed Mark Sullivan to hurt us for so long. Silence and shame and the myth that family problems should stay private. I looked directly into the main camera. If you're trapped in an abusive relationship, know that leaving is possible. It's hard. Maybe the hardest thing you'll ever do, but it's possible. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-7233. Memorize it. Use it. Save yourself. "What about your mother?" another reporter called out. "Will you reconcile?" I paused, choosing my words carefully. "My mother is on her own journey now. She made choices I can't forgive. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I hope she finds peace. I hope she finds herself again. Whoever that is after all these years." "You're not angry?" "I'm furious," I said honestly. "I'll be angry for a long time. But anger isn't my ending. Mark Sullivan controlled my life through fear and violence. I refuse to let him control it through hatred. I'm choosing to heal, to help others, to build something meaningful from the wreckage." The truth was more complicated. Of course, the nightmares that woke me at 12:14 a.m., exactly. The panic attacks in grocery stores when I saw men who looked like Mark. The way I still flinched when someone moved too fast. The therapy sessions where I sobbed with rage at my mother's betrayal. But healing isn't linear, and it isn't pretty. It's messy and painful, and sometimes feels impossible. Yet every day, I chose to keep going. 6 months later, I stood in front of a conference room full of social workers, presenting on recognizing coercive control in family dynamics. I used my story, clinically detached now, as a case study. The young woman in the front row was crying. She found me afterward. "My stepfather," she whispered. "Everything you described. My mom acts just like yours did." I gave her my card, resources, hope. This was why I survived, to light the way for others still in darkness. A year after the trial, I got a letter forwarded from my old apartment. Mom's handwriting, postmarked from Arizona. "Emily, I'm writing this from a women's shelter in Phoenix. I left Portland. Too many memories. Too many people who knew us as Mark's family. I'm working again, nursing at a clinic for underserved populations. I'm in therapy twice a week. I'm learning who Linda is without David, without Mark, without being someone's wife or mother. I know you may never read this. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I remember her now. The woman who wore red lipstick and sang in the shower. She's not back yet, but sometimes I see glimpses. I think about you every day, not with guilt, though there's plenty of that, but with awe. You became everything I couldn't. Strong, independent, unbreakable. You saved yourself when I couldn't save either of us. Your father would be so proud. I'm proud too, though I have no right to be. All my love, Mom." I kept the letter but didn't respond. Maybe someday I would. Maybe when the anger finally burned itself out, when the memories stopped hurting, when I could think of her without feeling that twist of betrayal in my chest. Or maybe never. Maybe some wounds don't heal. They just scar over, and you learn to live with the damage. 2 years post-trial, I published my first research paper on intergenerational trauma in domestic violence situations. My supervisor said it was groundbreaking. I dedicated it to all the daughters still waiting for their mothers to choose them. Mark would be eligible for parole in 3 more years. His lawyer had already filed appeals. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had restraining orders, security systems, a life built on something stronger than fear. I had survived him once. I could do it again if necessary. Standing in my new apartment, one with reinforced doors and windows that locked properly, I looked at the photo I kept on my bookshelf. Not of Mom, not anymore, but of Dad, holding 8-year-old me at the beach, both of us laughing at something lost to time. "I kept my promise, Dad," I whispered. "Just not the way either of us expected." Outside, Portland was waking up. Another day, another chance to help someone escape their Mark Sullivan, another opportunity to prove that survival is possible, that justice can prevail, that sometimes the victim becomes the victor. My phone rang. The crisis hotline where I volunteered weekends. Another woman needing help, needing hope, needing someone who understood. "Crisis line. This is Emily," I answered. "You're safe to talk. I'm here to listen." Because that's what we do. We survive. We escape. We heal. And then we turn back to help others find their way out of the darkness. We become the light we needed when everything seemed hopeless. Mark Sullivan took 18 years of my life, but the rest is mine, and I'm going to make every moment count. The woman on the phone was crying, whispering about her husband, her fear, her desperate need to escape. I settled into my chair, grabbed my resource list, and began to help her save herself. "You're brave for calling," I told her. "That's the first step. Now, let's figure out the next ones together." This is my revenge. Not violence, not hatred, but living well, helping others, being everything Mark said I'd never be, being free. And somewhere in Arizona, maybe my mother was learning the same lesson. Maybe redemption is possible, even for those who stood by and watched. Maybe forgiveness could come with time. Or maybe not. Either way, I was finally, truly free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Please comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Your experiences and insights matter, and together, we can break the silence around domestic violence.